Hi everybody. Today we are talking about adjusting to life being a caregiver for an elderly parent. Are you a caregiver whose life has changed? You are adjusting to life with your elderly parents. Maybe you moved out of the house years ago and you've been on your own, and then one day the phone rings. And it's a call from mom or dad that changes your life and basically turns it upside down. They've had a health problem, they need care, they need you. All those things that you were doing or you were planning to do suddenly came crashing to a screeching halt. Now you find yourself stressed out. You're trying to manage your job, your family, your children, and one or two sets of elderly parents if you're married. Everything can seem just impossible. Maybe you have this dreadful feeling. Maybe you wake up in the middle of the night. Maybe you have dreams that, oh my gosh, this is my future for the foreseeable future, for a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. It's hard to predict, right? There can be a big fear of the unknown and fear that things aren't going to work out the way that you want. It's kind of like your life has been permanently altered, or at least temporarily altered, for a period of time that you have no way to put a date on, a year on. And so how we think about these things, how you and I think about these things, return to us in some form or condition of life, meaning they affect our health, they affect our mental health, they affect everything else in our life. And so if we want these conditions that happen because of our worries and the way that we're thinking to change, specific to this adjustment that we made to care for elderly parents, we can look at doing some small changes, or other times it really may take some big radical changes to get us to a place where we're feeling a little more comfortable. Changes that we can't even think of or imagine. Our brain just doesn't have time to go there. So, if you want a better outcome in this situation of your life is affected by caring for your elderly parents, maybe it's time to think about a bigger plan, something larger, instead of doing what most of us do, right? There's a problem today, we deal with it. There's a problem tomorrow, we deal with it. Instead of dealing with one problem and one problem and one problem at a time. So during this video, I'm going to share examples of how we all can get stuck in feeling like, oh, there's nothing I can do about this situation. And we can refuse to think differently. So you may not think you're in this position, but if you're stuck, you probably are, even just a little bit. So you can either make the choice to stay where you are, or you can say, you know what, I'm done. No more of this. I'm willing to change the way I think about this situation. I'm willing to change the way that I look at this situation. I'm willing to change how I react and I respond so that I can be in a better place for myself, mentally and physically, at work, with my family, with my kids. Because as you know, if you've been doing this for a while, or it happens suddenly, being a caregiver can take a huge toll on your life. If this is your first time on my channel, I'm Pamela D Wilson. I'm a caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker. I help adults and their caregivers work through the health, financial, legal aspects of caregiving, including navigating all of these family relationship issues. I also serve as an expert witness for law firms and clients in matters of guardianship and conservatorship, memory loss, care management, home care, and more. If you want to learn more about me and my background, below this video down there are links to my bio, my website, services. You can schedule a one-on-one consultation with me. Please do, I ask you to like this video, follow my channel, share these videos, and comment, even if it's only to say thank you. One little thank you and one comment helps these videos reach more people all over the world. So, the number one thought process to adjust to life with elderly parents is to realize that change and making choices are necessary for your survival as a caregiver. They're also necessary for your parents' survival, right? Even if you have the most wonderful parents in the world, being involved in their life and their care, as they age, it can be time-consuming, challenging, life-affecting. It doesn't matter how much you like or love somebody. Caregiving is hard. So, look at yourself and your habits and what you believe about the current situation and believe about yourself. Do you believe that you don't have a choice? Do you believe that there are no options? Does your culture tell you this is what you have to do? You're the oldest son, you're the youngest daughter, you're the one that, is just going to do this because you're not married maybe. And what else do you believe? Do you believe in possibilities? Do you look at life saying, I can learn new things, I can learn new abilities, I can learn new skills and talents, I can get better at a lot of things, and you actually have an interest in that? So if you're open to learning new things and listening to new ideas and opinions, that can open the door for more possibilities and making choices. Or maybe you're on the other side and you're saying, what? I have never been good at, reading or math or getting along with people. And, I don't think I can do this, or I'm not going to change, or I don't want to put in the effort to do anything different. Then you're kind of saying, well, I'm okay with this situation, even if I'm miserable, and I'm just going to live with it, and that's going to be the way my life is. Some people are kind of sometimes in the middle, right? They can say, well, things are the way they are, and they can put off problem solving or put off challenges. But what happens is these little problems over here keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then eventually someday you're going to have to deal with them. But the problem is, if you don't deal with them when they're small, they can grow to be big. And then when they're big, they're not as easy to solve versus if you would have taken care of them earlier. So it's kind of like, you have a car and it's making a little noise and you're thinking, oh, not a big deal, I'll just wait. And then 6 months down the road, you go to the mechanic and he's like, oh my gosh, you have this wrong and this wrong and this wrong and this wrong. And if you would have just, come to me 6 months earlier, it would have been this, $200 repair. Now it's a $2,000 repair. Well, dealing with caregiving is kind of like that. And sometimes there's a point of like, well, now you need a new car. Well, you can't exactly trade in your parents, right? So, the question to ask yourself is, do you have a hard time with all of this? And do you see that, sometimes trying different things, even if they don't exactly work out the way you think, is better than doing nothing at all. And at least you're learning something, which is positive, right? So the question you have to ask yourself is, are you open to looking at things differently, or are you so exhausted and burned out that you're just like, until the house is burning down, I'm not doing a thing? So in the context of adjusting to life with elderly parents, this is the first thing that you want to get over mentally, right? Is, okay, I'm going to have to do something differently. Even though I don't want to, I don't like to, I'm kicking, I'm screaming, I'm dragging my feet, I'm going to do this because I know something needs to change. Now, the other thing where that maybe like you're stuck and a little resentful and angry is you have siblings who aren't helping out. And maybe they're going on with their lives and they're going on vacation and they're having all this success and you're angry and you're resentful, right? Well, instead of being angry or resentful, look at what they're doing as your motivation to change your life and the care situation. Because unless you do, you're going to be angry and resentful at them the rest of your life because of the choices that you are not making. Don't blame things on them. It's the choices that you are not making. So, in this bigger scheme, you have to look at options, even crazy ones. You just put them all down. And then you say, well, this might be possible, this might be better, but you have to take the time to go through them. And if you're a burned out caregiver, caregivers are like, oh, Pamela, I don't have time, I don't have the energy, I'm too exhausted. Well, do you want to stay where you are or do you want to improve things? So let's kind of just take a step back and look at how caregiving situations get out of control in the first place. Because if you're going to try to work your way out of this, you have to see how you worked your way into this with your elderly parents. The first one, maybe your elderly parents have a lot of health problems and they haven't been really good about taking care of themselves. So maybe they haven't gone regularly to the doctor, or they didn't eat healthy or exercise or, do whatever was good for them, right? And so now they're on a lot of medications, and instead of, one health problem, maybe they have 5 or 6 or 7. And so all of this makes doing daily activities more difficult. So they're having difficulty with, bathing or showering themselves, getting dressed, making meals, grocery shopping, managing prescriptions. Maybe they've got some mobility problems where they're a fall risk. And so all of these issues with their daily activities are causing you to contribute more time, and they need more of your help. The other one is, let's just talk about physical things. So maybe they weren't active and maybe they had a fall or broke a hip, and now they have problems related to accidents or health. And so from a perspective that way, maybe they weigh a little too much and that's causing knee problems. Or maybe they go out and after a trip to the grocery store, they're just like, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted, I have to go to bed. Or maybe their house is just like so cluttered because they don't pick up after it. I mean, there's all these complications that come in that affect caregivers' relationships with elderly parents. Or maybe you were that child who let your brother or sister do everything. You're like going and living your life, and you get a call one day from your brother or sister who's been the caregiver, and they're like, you know what? I'm done. I'm out of here. Mom and Dad, they are now yours to deal with. Okay? So maybe you were on the other side. If any of these situations happen to you or are happening to you, let's look at what you can do. So if you compare day-to-day caregiving versus bigger picture, right? And I'll give an example of this. So how many of you have heard of that game? It's called Whack-A-Mole. It's an arcade game. And there's this, let's just say there's this ground and there's these toy moles keep popping up and you're supposed to take a hammer and hit the moles, right? So people who are set in their ways can approach life like whack-a-mole. Your parents may say, well, I'm not going to deal with that until it happens. Or, they can carry me out of here, on my feet. I'm not leaving my house. So a whack-a-mole situation relates to trying to solve a problem in little bits and pieces or one at a time. You deal with this and then you deal with that and you deal with that. But what you don't realize is all these things are actually combined together and one is causing another. So in a sense, you're only doing a temporary fix or a minor change and then the next thing happens. And I'll give an example of this with health, right? So somebody initially has high blood pressure. Not a big problem by itself because maybe you can change your diet or lose some weight or exercise and then you don't need to take medications. But let's say that you have high blood pressure and you're over age 65. And that results in you becoming less active and you're stressed, you're not eating well. So then maybe high blood pressure, leads to type 2 diabetes. And then maybe type 2 diabetes leads to a stroke. And maybe then we add some kidney problems in here and some arthritis. And then you've got circulatory problems because of the high blood pressure and the stroke. And now you have Alzheimer's or dementia. So not dealing with little problems at a time compound and they snowball. And if you're a caregiver, you know problems come up unexpectedly. You know, yesterday you didn't have this problem, today, you know, you got a lot of problems. And your parents, because all they deal with is problems, right, are calling you every day saying, oh my gosh, it's an emergency, the house is burning down, you got to get over here. And you're thinking, I got to live my life. I can't keep like responding to every problem that you have. Like, you know, the television remote doesn't work today and you can't watch, I don't know, some show that you want to watch. It gets exhausting. And you can be continually running and running and running to deal with one expected problem after another, and then you just don't have a bigger term solution. And so when I meet with caregivers in one-to-one situations, I hear a lot of these type of situations. And I say, well, yes, you have all these things to deal with, but let me say these are other things that you want to consider, because if you deal with this situation today, down the road, this situation is just waiting for you. So you have to, whether you want to or not, if you want a solution, have to look at the bigger picture of things, especially if you're a caregiver who's, you know, adjusting to life with elderly parents, and this looks like it's going to be a long time project. So unstick your mind and your beliefs. There are solutions. Now, caregivers will say, hey, I've tried everything, nothing worked. Well, maybe you did, maybe you didn't. Maybe you didn't try the right things, or maybe you didn't know information about other options that are out there. I know when you're in this, those challenges and those obstacles can seem really big. And I'm not saying that they're not, but it's important to keep looking at options, looking at possibilities, looking for solutions until you come up with the right solution. And that can take talking to people outside of your family situation. It can take talking to an expert such as myself, because a lot of times when we're stuck, we just don't know what we don't know, or we're so like, you know, stuck against the wall that we're refusing to see that, yes, there are other options that may be a little bit of work, that may be things that we don't want to do, but what's on the other side of that? Maybe something really good. So how do you know if you're really stuck? So caregivers will say to me, oh, I will never put my mother into a care home. I promised them I wouldn't do that. Or my parents will never accept paid caregivers in the home. Or that's going to be too hard of a change on my mom or my dad. When you start placing absolutes like, I'll never do that, they won't say yes, that's never going to happen. That's when you start putting limitations on possibilities. And if you keep saying that, of course, nothing's ever going to change, because you're refusing to allow it to change. So the question you have to ask yourself is, am I refusing to think differently about this? Maybe yes, maybe you are. And I will be the first to say that so many situations in managing care, or even daily life, they're not perfect. You know, they're not the way that we would like them to be, okay? But is there any good in this possibility? And I know this because I have managed care for people for over 25 years. I've been in so many of these less than ideal situations. Now, most of them, though, when you think about it, the change is temporary, because then you can adjust to the change and figure out how to work through it. It's just getting your head around the fact that, okay, I've got to make a change. And this is going to be like not fun for, 6 months. So maybe it's temporary pain for long-term benefit and long-term gain. And, so this idea of adjusting to life with elderly parents, it's kind of like you adjust and then you come to a place of stability, and then maybe you adjust and you come to a place of stability. So it's kind of like this ongoing change and give and take and adjustment and all of that kind of stuff. Now, we all have to accept that eventually, even in our lives when we get older, there's going to be difficult choices that we are not going to want to make. Maybe we don't want to sell a house and downsize. Maybe we don't want to move into a care community. Maybe we, are diagnosed with something and we don't want to have surgery, but it's really the best option, right? Ignoring these problems is not going to make them easier to deal with. So when you look at this, what you want to do is look at all the options, even the crazy ones, and figure out which ones are most realistic and practical, and what it's going to take in the way of effort. So your time, your money, your mental condition, scheduling, coordination. And you've got to get everybody on the same page, which means you and your parents and your spouse, if you have a spouse, and your children. Because I will have daughters or sons say, oh, you know what? We can't put our parents in a care home. We'll just pay for it. And the question I asked them is, I said, well, is your husband or wife okay with that? Have you talked about that? And they say to me, well, no, but that's just, the way we think it is. And I said, well, maybe not when you talk to your spouse or your children and you figure out like what you're giving up and what you have to sacrifice. That may not be the most practical thing for anybody or the best thing for anybody. And so let's look at mom or dad. They're living at home. Hey, we're okay by ourselves. We don't need any help. But as the caregiver, you've been helping them out, right? Because you see what's happening and you're afraid that, like, if you don't help, something is going to happen or something worse will happen versus what's already happened. But the question here is, whose responsibility will it be if something happens to your parents? Is the life of your parents your responsibility? Has it been your responsibility since the day you were born? I would say no. Your parents are adults. Their actions and decisions and choices got them where they are today, just as your actions and your decisions and your choices got you where you are today. And as a son or daughter or husband or wife, it's not that you don't want to be helpful, right? But sometimes to be helpful, other people have to be a little more flexible by talking about options and maybe doing things that they don't want to do. I mean, let's face it, you're a caregiver. How many things are you doing that you don't want to do? You're going over on the weekends. You'd rather be spending time with your kids. You'd rather be focusing on your career. You'd rather be going to school and taking a class, right? How many things are you doing that you don't want to do, or you'd rather be doing something else? What about your parents? They're just enjoying the benefits of your doing all these things you don't want to do. Parents can be like that, and caregivers can be like that, right? Anybody can refuse help and dig into their beliefs and saying, I'm not going to do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. You have the right to do that. It's just the outcome of those choices will affect your life. So, if you're feeling stuck, you're allowing your life, your career, your family, your marriage, your health, your children, everything you want to do to be affected. How is that working out for you? Are you happy with that? It may be working out great for your parents, not so great for you. So don't let the nevers and the I can't do that, I said I would never do that, and the inflexibility control your life and your mind. If you say, never, I'm not going to do that, you may be just as inflexible as your parents who are saying, I'm not going to accept a caregiver, I don't need any help, I'm not going to do that, right? All of these nevers and digging in create difficult and impossible solutions. But if you stayed with me this long in this video, you probably already know that. The question is, what are you willing to do to get out of the situation, and how do you do it? Identify the problems, the challenges. Write them down. Be honest about the obstacles and the hard decisions and the choices that have to be made. Again, identify the effort it will take take to change this? And don't be scared off. Ignore the naysayers and the people who say, oh, you can't do that. You should keep taking care of your parents. You can't move into a care community. You can't do that. Well, let them come live in your shoes. And if they're telling you you can't do that, say, well, here, let me just take a month off. Why don't you come and take care of my parents for a month, and then you tell me that I can't do it? They're not living your life. They don't know what your life is. It's easy for other people to tell you what to do. And realize that most people don't want to or won't do the hard stuff. They won't make the hard decisions. They're going to discourage you because they wouldn't do it themselves, right? So in all of this, you have to gain the commitment of the people who are involved. Your elderly parents, your siblings, if they're helping out, maybe aunts and uncles, anybody that's involved. You get everybody together and make a plan. If people don't want to be involved, fine, then they don't get a say. And in some cases, the only person's commitment to do this that you may need is yours, especially if everybody else is saying no. You have to make the best decision for yourself. If other people are refusing or they're not helping and they're holding you back, right? Because again, you have a choice. You have to decide where you want to go from here. I thank you all so much for being here. I'm Pamela D Wilson. I'm a caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker. Go to my website, PamelaDWilson.com, for caregiving tips, support, information. It's all based on my 25 years of professional work in this area. Please do, I ask you, like this video, follow my channel, share these videos, comment, even if it is only to say thank you, or comment. Tell me your situation. One little thank you or comment helps these videos reach more and more people around the world. Have a fabulous day today and every day until I see you again soon in the next video.